I opened the front door for the fourth time that hour, hoping to see Rosalie pedaling up on the yellow bike she'd saved all summer to buy, ringing the bell twice like she always did, so I'd know she was home, but she still wasn't there. Rosalie? Nothing. I grabbed my keys and drove down every street in the neighborhood with my window down, but I couldn't find her. Once it got dark, I called the police, and they searched for 3 weeks, but found nothing. They knocked on every door on the street, even old Mr. Avery next door, who shook his head and said he'd keep an eye out. They closed the case, but I told myself every single day that I would find out what happened to her. 7 years later, I was on my way out to put up more missing person posters when I noticed Mr. Avery's kids were having a garage sale. He had just passed away, so I walked over to give my condolences and froze in the middle of the driveway. A bright yellow bike was leaning against a folding table with a $5 price tag on the handle. I picked it up, turned it over, and found her initials scratched into the bottom of the seat. The woman behind the table smiled at me. "You want it?" I put $5 down on the table and carried the bike home without saying a word. I sat in my garage staring at it and thought about the man who had lived 30 feet away from me for 7 years. Then I picked up the phone and called the detective who worked Rosalie's case. "I need you to come to my house right now." They searched the property the next morning. I stood on my porch and watched them carry things out of his shed one by one until one of them stopped, looked inside a box, and went very still. The detective crossed the lawn toward me, and I already knew from his face. I could not speak. He put his hand on my shoulder. "We found enough evidence. It was him. The man who took my daughter had lived 30 feet away from me for the last 7 years, and even his own children never knew who he really was, or that they'd sold me the one piece of my daughter I had left." I was in gym class doing push-ups when I felt like my bladder was about to explode. I remembered I drank 3 cartons of milk at lunch and really needed to tinkle. I raised my hand. "Can I use the bathroom?" The teacher looked at his watch. "Okay, but you know the rule. You only get 2 minutes in the bathroom, or else detention." I was scared it would take more and asked for more time. "I give myself 2 minutes. That's all anyone needs." He started the timer on his watch. I ran to the bathroom, but when I got there was a line of kids ahead of me. The seconds were ticking. I felt like I was going to piss my pants any second, and I was doing the "I need the bathroom" dance like a champ. Then it was finally my turn, but before I could get in the stall, the teacher grabbed my arm. "Time's up. Let's go." "But I haven't gone yet." 2 minutes. Those are the rules. He walked me back to the gym floor, but I couldn't hold it anymore. It ran down my leg in front of everyone. The whole class started laughing. The teacher watched, leaned against the wall, sipping his water bottle. Then my best friend Samuel ran over and pulled me to the locker room. He opened his locker and handed me his extra gym shorts. While I changed, he looked at me. "He's messed up. You need to get him back." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small bottle. "Laxatives. I get constipated sometimes, but you should put it in his water bottle." I could hear the teacher laughing with the class and grabbed the bottle, not knowing how crazy things were about to get. When we got back to the gym, the teacher was distracted, timing another student's bathroom break. I saw his water bottle sitting on the bleachers and smirked. I untwisted the top, poured the whole thing of laxatives in, and sat down. I didn't even try to hide the smile on my face. Minutes later, the teacher grabbed his water bottle and chugged it. I smiled because I knew my plan was working. Then, we were doing jumping jacks when he stopped mid-count. His hand went to his stomach. I think I need to use the restroom." I pulled out my phone. "You want me to start the timer for you? 2 minutes is all you need, right?" His eyes went wide. Then he started running across the gym holding his butt with one hand. Fart noises echoed through the gymnasium. Samuel yelled, "He's pooping his pants!" The class joined in laughing and started counting down. He was in the bathroom for 3 periods and never timed anyone ever again. The officers walked me down the cement hallway, leading me to my execution. One laughed. "Time for death row. So are you finally ready to admit that you're guilty?" I shook my head. I didn't do it. I was telling the truth, but they didn't believe me. No one ever did. They pushed open a steel door, and the officer nudged me. "So, which way do you want to die?" A man stood with a rifle. A vial of poison sat on a tray, and an electric chair waited in the middle. I pointed at the chair, because I just wanted it fast. They strapped me down, and I clenched my eyes shut before whispering my last words. "I love you, Mama. See you on the other side." But after a few seconds, nothing happened. I opened my eyes, and the officer jiggled the cables. "Okay, let's try this again." He flipped the switch, and my entire body went rigid, but still nothing happened. I gasped. No way. Was I going to live? The warden lost his patience and jerked his head at the rifleman. "Just shoot the bastard." The barrel came up and pointed straight at my chest, but the rifleman's hands started shaking. His voice cracked as his eyes filled with tears. "This is a divine intervention. It proves he's innocent. I can't shoot him." An officer hauled me out of the seat and sat down in it himself. "I'll prove that it's not some divine intervention BS. Turn on the switch." The switch was flipped, and the chair instantly started working. He threw himself out of the chair to stop himself from dying. He wheezed, "It works. Throw him back on." But when they strapped me back in and tried to spark the chair again, it didn't work. Officers fell to their knees, and the one who'd told me to admit I was guilty was crying now, pointing at me and shouting, "The universe won't let him die." guy. He's innocent. He was telling the truth. I wrapped my arms around the chair and screamed, "Thank God!" Because even though no one in my life believed I was innocent, a chair did. And in the end, that's all that mattered. I was visiting my dad in the hospital when I saw his hospital roommate poking his broken leg and laughing. My dad was smiling and letting it happen, so I shoved his roommate. "You're hurting my dad. His leg is broken." He grinned. "Oops, I'm a patient, so you can't do anything about it." I wanted to kill him because my dad has head trauma from a car accident and couldn't defend himself. But even with head trauma, he's still nice and smiles at everyone. But looking at his roommate hooked to machines, I let him off the hook and just held my dad's hand, telling myself it wouldn't happen again. Moments later, I left to use the bathroom real quick. But when I was walking back to the room, I heard my dad sobbing and ran in immediately. I saw the roommate digging his thumb into the cast and poking at the break in my dad's leg, watching him cry and holding the call button far away so my dad couldn't reach it while smiling and laughing diabolically. I felt my cheeks clench. I pushed him, grabbed the call button, and pressed it because I needed to get help. Immediately, a nurse came in. I pointed. "He keeps hurting my dad's broken leg. My dad can't even defend himself." The nurse looked at my dad, but he was smiling again. "He's heavily sedated. He can't even feel it." And she left. I couldn't believe it. The roommate leaned back. "I told you, you can't do anything about it." By the end of the day, the leg was swollen and gray. I screamed for help until a doctor finally cut the cast open. He stared at it for a long second. The bone shattered. "He's never going to walk on this leg again. I'm sorry." My dad just smiled at him. No idea what he'd lost, and my heart broke. I looked at the roommate sleeping in the next bed, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I waited by my dad's bed. The roommate woke up, looked over, and grinned. He reached across to my dad's leg one more time. "Let's see if I can make him cry harder this time." I grabbed his wrist right before he could touch it. He laughed. "You can't do anything about it, remember?" But I pulled his blanket back, wrapped my hand around his leg, and twisted until I heard it pop. He screamed so loud the whole floor heard it. The nurse came running in. "What happened?" I let go and looked right at her. "Oh, relax. He's heavily sedated. He can't feel a thing. I broke him the same way he broke my dad." Oops. My wife slid a manila envelope across her parents' dinner table and said, "I know about Catherine." Nobody had touched the food. Her dad sat with both hands folded beside his plate. Her brother blocked the doorway with his arms crossed, and Natalie was sitting at the opposite end of the table instead of beside me. I opened the envelope. Credit card charges, hotel photos, screenshots from a contact saved as K. Every Tuesday for 3 months, highlighted in yellow. "Before you lie," her mother said. "We hired someone." My fork slipped off the napkin and hit the floor. I tried to stand. Her brother stepped forward. "Sit down and explain who she is." Every time I opened my mouth, someone threw another page at me. A hotel lobby photo, a restaurant receipt, a text from Kay that said, "Perfect night." Natalie tapped the paper with one shaking finger. "Was I supposed to find out before or after you took her to our anniversary spot?" I said. "Please let me explain." Her dad pushed a folded document across the table. "She already filed. Divorce papers." My chest went hollow. "You filed before asking me?" Natalie's brother shrugged. "We wanted proof first." I reached for my phone, but her mother moved between us. "No private conversations. Say it here." That was when tiny footsteps creaked above us. My stomach tightened. "Where are the kids?" Natalie wiped her cheek. "Upstairs." I gripped the chair. "What did you tell them?" Nobody answered fast enough. Her mother lifted her chin. "We told them Daddy made grown-up mistakes and would live somewhere else." The room blurred around the yellow highlights. "You told our kids I was leaving them?" I pulled my own envelope from inside my jacket and dropped it on the table. Cream paper slid out first, followed by a guest list with every name in that room printed under family. K is Catherine Benner, the event coordinator at Grand Lakeview. The hotel charges were deposits. The restaurants were tastings. Perfect night was our vow renewal. Natalie's hands covered her mouth. I unfolded the invitation and pushed it toward her. "Natalie, 10 years later, I'd still choose you." Her father's name was on the RSVP card. So was her mother's. So was her brother's. Nobody touched it. Upstairs, my daughter called, "Daddy." I walked past the table, picked up both kids, and carried them to the car, while the invitation stayed open beside the divorce papers. Natalie followed me to the porch, crying so hard she could barely say my name. I buckled the kids in and shut the door. "You should have opened my envelope first." We got a call from a woman crying, saying she was in a gas station getting robbed. She said he had a gun, and we immediately rushed over. We ran inside with our weapons drawn, but weirdly, everyone was calm. We were suspicious, but the cashier didn't look nervous. But then, he pointed outside. "There he is!" He was getting in his car, and when we ran out yelling, "Hey, stop!" he panicked. He got in his car and sped away, and we immediately started chasing him. He was terrified, but we weren't slowing down. He stopped at a house and tried to run inside, but just before he could, we caught him. "Freeze!" He was shivering. He dropped his gun and begged us not to shoot. We cuffed him, but weirdly, he didn't have any money on him. All he had was some bread and peanut butter. "Where's the money?" But he swore he had none. "Stop lying! Where are you hiding it?" But he kept going. "I'm sorry, I just needed food and I don't have a job. Please, it's for my kids." None of us believed him. He was hiding the money somewhere, but as I was about to break his car window and search it, I heard something. "Dad, what's happening?" I turned, and a little girl was standing in the front door. She looked paper thin. "Go inside, sweetheart, please." She picked up the loaf of bread and said, "Is this for us?" "Yay, you're the best dad ever." I realized it was true. He didn't have any money and had to rob the gas station just to get some food to feed his kids. I don't know why, but it got to me. Uncuff him. They were shocked. What? Why? Do it. Now. They took the cuffs off, and I told him to never steal again, then let him go. He ran inside and hugged his daughter, and I watched him crying while we left. A man's leg was smashed flat under a tire and bent the wrong way, and he screamed, "Doc, get this car off me, please." So 2 firefighters grabbed the car to lift it, but I yelled, "Stop, don't lift it." Everyone stared at me like I was crazy, but I felt the man's pulse. His leg's been crushed so long the muscle is dying and full of poison. If you lift the car, that poison rushes straight to his heart and he dies. But then a girl screamed, "Dad, please just lift it off him, please," while firefighters held her back. And I knew I couldn't let her dad die in the street. The man grabbed my arm. "Doc, just lift it please. My daughter needs me," but he'd be dead in seconds if I freed him. But the crowd heard him begging and ran to lift the car, and I quickly threw my arms out. "Touch that car and you kill him." Someone shouted, "You're lying about poison while he dies. Just lift the car." So I pulled a needle and a vial from my bag and filled it with medicine. The poison is called potassium. A little is normal, but too much makes the heart stop. The car is keeping the poison trapped in his leg, and that's keeping him alive. I stuck the needle in his arm and pushed the medicine. This keeps his heart safe from the poison. Just give it 1 minute to work, and then we lift. But the man cried, "I can't feel my leg." That's when the girl broke free and dropped beside him. "Daddy, don't leave me." But he choked out, "I love you, baby." The girl cried harder while the crowd waited for my signal. I watched the seconds tick by as he went pale and his eyes closed, but his heart was beating steady. 30 seconds, and the girl held his hand tighter. 20 seconds later, I waved everyone over. "Get ready, we're almost there." They gripped the edges, everyone sweating nervously, and the girl sobbing hard. 3, 2, 1, lift! The car came up, and a fireman pulled the man free and loaded him onto a stretcher while the man sobbed, "Thank you, thank you." But later that night, he woke up screaming, "My leg! Where's my leg?" I rushed into his room. The car crushed it too badly to save, but he grabbed at the empty spot screaming, "Give it back! This can't be real." But then his daughter grabbed his face. "Daddy, it's okay. You're still here. That's all I wanted." And that calmed him down, so he wrapped his arms around her. And he only got to do that because I never let them lift that car too soon. My dad dropped my math homework in the trash and said, "You'll never make anything of yourself." I fished the page back out and tried doing the sum again. He sighed and took his prostate cancer medication with cold tea, watching me get it wrong. "You don't have it in you, and I'm going to die knowing my only son never succeeded." I dug my pencil into the page until it snapped. I was going to make him choke on those words. A week later, I aced the test he said I'd fail and slapped it on the table. "Seems like I do have it in me, Pops." He glanced at the red A and wheezed. "Looks like luck was on your side, eh, boy?" I opened my mouth to respond, but he kept his eyes glued to the crossword puzzle and crossed another word off. But I wasn't going to stop until he admitted he was proud of me. And by the time I graduated college with a master's in cancer research, I chose to research prostate cancer, the same one that was still killing him, to prove to my dad I could be successful. The week my team built a drug finally worked, the first thing I did was grab the test results to visit my dad and show him. I walked into his room where he was doing another crossword, and I laid the report on the blanket. "The trial worked. My teams." "You're welcome, Dad." I waited for him to finally crack. He put down the crossword, turned the report over with a shaking hand, and smiled down at it. "I always knew you would do amazing things in this life." I laughed. "Yeah, right. You told me I'd never make anything of myself." His eyes filled with tears. "I know, because you had such a bright future, but you were so lazy. I knew you'd only work hard if I gave you a reason to prove me wrong." My face drained of color. I sank onto the bed and held his hand, and the proud look on his face that I'd chased since I was 12 was finally here. "I'm so proud of what you made of yourself, son." I teared up because it was there all along, but I was just too blind to see it. My daughter Lily and her best friend Chris liked each other since kindergarten. They sat next to each other every day, held hands, hand-picked each other flowers, and turned red if you asked them if they liked each other. Lily loved wedding shows, and one night she pointed at a bride being twirled on screen and said, "That's going to be me one day." But then she got diagnosed with cancer at 10 years old. Chris visited her every day, bringing her hand-picked flowers, trying to get her to eat something, and the only time she seemed slightly okay was curled up next to Chris, watching her wedding shows. After months of treatment, doctors told us Lily only had a few weeks left. One day, while sitting on her bed, she told me her final wish. "I want to marry Chris. Actually marry, like in the show." I teared up, and that night called Chris's parents. The next day, Chris walked up to Lily's hospital bed and got down on one knee. She cried, and he put the ring he'd spent his whole allowance on onto her finger. That Saturday, Chris showed up to our garden in a little suit holding a hand-picked bouquet as Lily walked down the aisle in a white dress altered to fit her tiny frame. I officiated the wedding, and both Chris and Lily turned red and smiled when the other said, "I do." That day, Lily ate 2 full slices of cake and danced with Chris in the grass. He twirled her just like on the wedding show, and for a few brief hours, we all forgot about the cancer. Lily passed away 3 days later while Chris held her hand, and after 5 years, Chris still visits her grave every Saturday in the suit he married her in, let out at the seams to fit him as he grows. I brought my pet chimpanzee named Lemon into class for show and tell, but the teacher immediately yelled, "That thing is dangerous, it's gonna attack someone." I looked at Lemon calmly eating an apple in his shades and assured her he was fine, but then a kid opened his bag. "I'm gonna prove that chimp's dangerous." He threw a thick textbook at Lemon's head, hitting him and knocking his glasses to the floor. I heard Lemon whimper, and he immediately cowered behind me, trembling and holding his apple close to his chest. I looked around. See, he's not dangerous, but everyone was already pointing at the door. We don't want a rabid animal in our classroom. I turned back to Lemon's terrified eyes and decided it wasn't worth it. Fine, we'll leave. But while walking out, the alarm suddenly blared. Lockdown. This is not a drill. I heard a rifle reloading in the hallway, and my blood ran cold. Everyone instantly panicked and scrambled under their desks, making noise as they did. Lemon clung to my chest, shaking, and we ran to hide. But then the door handle began rattling. A bullet rifled through and hit the window inches from our teacher's head. Someone screamed, "We're gonna die," as the lock began splintering. I lay there, thinking this was it. But then Lemon jumped off my chest. Lemon, no, but he was already running to the door. The lock broke and burst open, and the shooter stepped in, his finger on the trigger. But Lemon was already in the air. His eyes widened in horror as he saw a chimpanzee in a chain flying at him, and he raised his gun. But Lemon's fist was already at his forehead. It connected so hard I heard a crack, and he fell and dropped the gun. Lemon immediately began mauling him while he screamed for help, but I only called him off after someone kicked the gun away. He jumped into my arms while the shooter laid there in agony without a face, and the whole class was now hailing Lemon as the school legend. I could bring him when I wanted to. I pulled out my pen and wrote in my diary, "I'm sneaking out to Robert's house tonight to play video games with him since Dad won't let me see him anymore." I left it on my shelf and snuck into the closet, watching through the gap because I knew what's about to happen. Within minutes, Dad walked in and opened my diary. He'd been spying on me for months, but tonight would be different. He read what I wrote, and his hands immediately flew to his head as he chucked my diary at the wall. "This is why I keep tabs on him," he muttered to himself. "After what I do to him tonight, he'll never even want to see Robert." My heart pounded as I tried to stay silent, and I watched him grab his thickest leather belt, then storm downstairs with his car keys. He slammed the door so hard my picture frame fell. I heard his car leave the driveway, and I quietly stepped out and opened my bedroom window. Robert jumped out of the bushes and climbed in with the biggest grin. We immediately dropped to the floor, setting the snacks out in front of us and grabbing our controllers. I laughed because I'd also tampered with Dad's car battery earlier. He'd break down on the highway, meaning me and Robert now had a full night of gaming ahead of us, and there was nothing he could do. I used my mom's credit card to buy Fortnite V-Bucks online, and that's when I noticed the green light on my brother's laptop camera turned on, pointed directly at me. I screamed in terror because my older brother told me the FBI watches everybody through laptop cameras. So when I noticed the green light glowing right as I clicked purchase, I knew I was finished. I committed credit card fraud, caught on camera by federal agents. I slammed the laptop shut, but it was too late. They already had my information, and the FBI was going to show up any minute. I needed to hide the evidence, so I stuffed Mom's credit card back in her purse and cleared the browser history. I peeked through the blinds and saw the mailman walking up to our porch, and I dove to the floor, certain he was an undercover agent scoping out the house. Then the Wi-Fi started buffering, and my stomach dropped because they were obviously monitoring my internet now. That's when I heard sirens wailing in the distance, getting louder. They were coming for me. My older brother walked in and found me hiding under the kitchen table, shaking. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he asked. I told him the FBI saw everything and they were almost here. He just started laughing, thinking I was making a joke. The sirens kept getting closer, so I made a decision. I had to turn myself in before they kicked down our door. I grabbed the phone and called 911. I told the operator I committed credit card fraud and wanted to turn myself in before the FBI came. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through the window. 2 cop cars pulled up outside. My mom came running to the door. "What's going on? What happened?" The cop checked his notepad. "Someone called about credit card fraud. Do you have your card on you, ma'am?" My mom frantically scanned her bank statements. "Wait, what's V-Bucks?" I immediately broke down crying and confessed everything, that I used her credit card and the FBI had me on camera, so I called the cops to turn myself in. One of the officers bit back a smile. "Son, how much did you spend?" I sniffled. $4.99. My mom slammed the bank statement on the counter. "Who told him the FBI watches through the camera?" She turned to my brother, who suddenly wasn't laughing anymore, and he got his laptop taken away. My friend Danny leaned over after the first inning of the Mets game. $100 says you can't do the 999 challenge. That's a hot hot dog and a beer every single inning, all 9 of them. You'll be lucky to make it to the 7th. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I said yes before he finished the sentence. I crushed the first hot dog, chased it with the rest of my beer, and watched Danny wave down a vendor for round 2. Easy money, I thought. I had no idea how stupid I was. By the 4th inning, the beer had the stadium tilting, and my stomach was a water balloon someone kept poking. Every hot dog harder to keep down than the last. The guy next to me clocked what I was doing, told his wife, who told the row behind her. So by the 5th section, 114 had a system. Hot dog 6 tried to come back up. I swallowed it back down, eyes watering, while the whole section held its breath. When it stayed put, they lost it. Strangers were flagging vendors before I finished chewing. A woman with a foam finger ran a live tally on her phone, and 2 rows back, somebody opened a side bet on whether I'd make it. I raised my beer, because that's what you do when 50 strangers believe in you, even with my body in full revolt. By the 8th inning, I couldn't have told you the score, the inning, or my own name. The 9th inning started, and the vendor vanished. The foam finger woman was craning her neck, Danny was scanning the aisle, and I figured that was it. Then I heard it. Mr. Met waddled up the aisle, giant baseball head bobbing, with a single hot dog tucked under one oversized arm. He stopped in front of me, held it out like a trophy, and I grabbed it with both hands. First bite, second bite. My jaw slowed, my eyes glazed over, and the whole section stopped breathing. For 1 second, I was sure it was all coming back up. The loudest burp of my life tore out, and the guy 3 rows up turned around. I crammed in the last bite, slammed the final beer, and threw both arms in the air. Section 114 lost its mind. Danny handed over $100 with the face of a man who'd made a terrible mistake. Mr. Met threw an arm around me for a photo I'll keep forever. I have absolutely no memory of the 7th inning. I walked into math class 2 minutes late, and the teacher immediately stopped me at the door with a pink tardy slip in her hand. I will see you in Saturday detention. Miss, my bus broke down on the way here from the hospital where I was visiting my mom, please. She held up her hand. You clearly have no respect for authority, and I'm done talking to you. You're getting a suspension. Go to the principal's office. I stood there frozen in shock, and the entire class went silent. Miss, please, I'm sorry. I can't afford a suspension. This will ruin my sports scholarship. Haven't you ever been late for something before? She smiled at me like I was a toddler. Nope, I'm ready for anything because I'm disciplined. Now get out. I walked out with only one thought. She had to pay. I spent the whole school year watching her, gathering information I could use against her, and that's how I found out she spent every summer in her Florida house, which meant her home would be completely empty. I broke into the principal office to find her address, and on the last day of school before summer, I marched straight to the garden center with my lawn money to buy supplies for my plan to ruin her. That night, I dug a trench across the mouth of her driveway and planted every single bamboo stick I bought all along her front yard. By July, it was past my chest, and I'd catch myself grinning at it mid-mow because I knew she was about to be cooked. The night before school started, she returned from Florida, and a cab dropped her off in the dark, and I watched from my porch as she stood frozen in front of a 12-foot wall of bamboo, her car trapped somewhere behind it. And when the first morning of school rolled around, I sat in her math class with my eyes glued to the door. Then the clock struck 8:01 a.m. She was officially 1 minute late for the first time ever. Kids started trading looks across the room, and I put my hands behind my head and kicked my feet on the table to sit back and enjoy the show. At 8:43 a.m., the door finally flew open, and she rushed in dripping sweat, blouse untucked, bamboo leaves still stuck in her hair. Before she even reached her desk, the principal leaned through the doorway behind her holding a clipboard. An hour late on the first day, I will see you in Saturday detention, Mrs. Whitmore. Someone has to supervise it this semester. Her head whipped around the room until her eyes locked on mine, and I gave her a little wave. I know it was you, she said through her teeth, but the principal was still standing behind her. Mrs. Whitmore, are you trying to blame a student for your own mistakes? She flipped around. I think it's best if you leave the school grounds immediately. I leaned in. What's wrong? I thought you were ready for anything. Give it to me straight, Sergeant. How many are dead? I slammed my hands on the table in my military uniform. My 6-year-old sister read from her piece of paper. 7 are dead. The rest are captured behind enemy lines. She looked over at Mom's chocolate container, with 7 empty chocolate wrappers beside her. We need to save them. We started going over the plan again, but then Mom stormed in and ripped the military beret off Lily's head. She got in her face and yelled, "I've told you the army isn't a game!" She shoved a chocolate candy in her mouth while screaming. "How dare you disrespect this military family!" She stormed back to the TV, and Lily lowered her head and began crying. She'd idolized me for being in the military and loved playing army games with me her whole life, but Mom never let her. So I kneeled and gently gripped her shoulder. "Listen to me, Sergeant. People will always try doubt your command, but a real general stays brave and holds the line anyway." I pointed to her chest and put the beret back on her head. "Can you do that for me? Your soldier needs you." She slowly nodded and wiped her eyes, and I saw life come back to her eyes. She gave me a salute. "Begin the operation." She hid behind a doorway, and I grabbed Mom's favorite snacks. "Thanks for letting me eat your German chocolates." Mom immediately came running in. "I told you no eating my chocolates." She didn't even notice as Lily snuck behind her into the living room and stuffed the chocolates into her pockets. She packed the container with rocks so it looked full, then gave me a salute. I gave Mom her chocolates back and snuck off to my room where Lily poured the stolen candy onto the floor. Mission completed. Divide and conquer Lily, just like I told you. But as we bit into the chocolate, chocolates, a scream came from the living room. Ow, I just chipped my tooth. Me and my best friend poked his dad's round belly during our sleepover, and I smirked. I bet you $5 I can bounce 10 of these marshmallows off your dad's belly without him waking up. Oscar aggressively grabbed my hand, grinning like the 5 was already his. Easy money. My dad is the lightest sleeper in the world. One time he came into my room and told me to stop breathing too loudly. I gently grabbed the marshmallow bag and lined up behind the couch, already dreaming of the pizza slice I was going to buy with the money. A pink marshmallow bounced off his belly button, and I banged my fist against my chest 3 times and whispered, 1 down, 9 to go. Oscar crossed his arms. Dude, you're toast. I ignored him and kept throwing. When I got to marshmallow 4, his snoring caught and stopped, but he kept sleeping, and I stuck my tongue out at Oscar to mock him. You're cooked. I landed marshmallow number 9, and his dad picked his belly button lint. He groaned. Who touched the thermostat? But then he lifted his leg, stretched his hands under his head, and kept sleeping. I was 1 toss away. Oscar nervously his t-shirt over his nose, and my heart slammed as I whispered, 10 or nothing, and let it fly. But suddenly, his dad's hand snapped up and caught it mid-air, eyes still shut, and my whole body went cold. He opened one eye, and he put the marshmallow on top of his own belly button. That's 10 landings. Pay the man. I started laughing, and Oscar's eyes widened with shock. You were awake? The whole time? He sat up, and the marshmallows rolled off his belly button. Son, I never sleep. Through anything. Oscar dug a crumpled 5 out of his pajama pocket and slapped it into my hand. I was still laughing when his dad picked up a marshmallow, bounced it off his own belly, and caught it in his mouth. I saw a wasp climbing on my girlfriend's calf and immediately hit it with my sandal. Cynthia stood from the couch. Babe, why the hell did you just hit me? I scratched my head to think of a lie because she was deathly allergic to wasps, and I didn't want to scare her. There was a fly on your leg. She turned to me. So what? It doesn't mean you have to hit me. Before I could respond, I saw another wasp climbing on her arm and smacked it again. Where were they all coming from? Cynthia smacked my hands off and sprung up from the couch. What is wrong with you? She started to walk to her room and turned around to say, I think you should leave. But when I turned around to face her, I saw Cynthia's face go completely pale, and she was pointing at the door. What is that? I peered over and saw that resting by the door was a wasp nest the size of a basketball, gray and breathing, already swarming with wasps that were coming in underneath the doorframe. Cynthia screamed, "Ah!" and the entire nest of wasps all turned to face her. I knew I had to do something, or she'd be toast. Without thinking, I grabbed her arm and shoved her out the door. Go! As soon as she walked out, I grabbed the nest and threw it into the center of the living room and locked the door shut with me inside it, so they wouldn't chase her down the street. The wasps started covering me, and she hit the window with both fists. Open the door, babe. I shook my head. A sting would just hurt me, but one would kill her, so I wasn't opening anything. I was 7 when my dad got ready to leave me and my mom. I'll be home soon. I'm going to find us diamonds, and we'll be rich forever. I grabbed his hand. I don't want diamonds. I want you. He laughed. You'll understand when you're older, son. He kissed my mom and walked toward the road, and neither of us knew if we were ever going to see him again. For the first few years, my dad sent letters from everywhere he went. The first one was from Africa, with a photo drawn of him waist deep in a red pit, grinning, along with a note promising that the next dig would be the one where he found diamonds. The next came from Spain, then France, then Italy. Every single one promised he'd be home soon. My mom set his place at dinner every night anyway, watching the road through the window while his food went cold. I worked the field so she wouldn't have to, and when years went by with no word from him, I sold the farm to a quiet man. Me and my mom did our best to move on, and we thought we'd never hear about him again. But 10 years later, I was reading an article in the newspaper that said the farmer we'd sold the farm to had pulled the biggest diamond in the country out of the river. The quiet man who bought it is a billionaire now. My dad had traveled the world to find what he'd had all along, and the whole time, diamonds lay right under his feet. I was working my first ever McDonald's shift when a dad came in with his 2 bratty snot-nosed twins. We want nuggets. They had their hands in the air, screaming so loud the old lady nearby dropped her coffee. The dad slammed his hands like I was his personal servant. I want 50 nuggets and I want them now. My kids haven't eaten all day and they don't like to wait. He snapped his fingers, and I noticed his twins literally drooling whilst looking at the nuggets in the back. That'll be $14, but he got in my face. Why the hell does it cost so much? I raised my hands. I just work here. I don't set the prices. His kids immediately punched his arms. We don't care what it costs. Just give us nuggets. His face twisted as he tossed a bunch of coins onto the counter. Keep the change. A McDonald's worker probably needs it. My hands shook angrily as I counted, and suddenly a dozen straws hit my face, one poking my left eye. My vision blurred and one of the twins pointed at me. That's for being so slow. Now go make the nuggets. He snapped his fingers. The dad was now leaning against a pillar scrolling his phone, while his kids got on a table chanting, "We want nuggets," and throwing crayons around. I wasn't paid enough to deal with this, but I had enough pride to do it anyway. I slowly walked to the back, holding my sore eye, and packed 50 nuggets just like they asked. I brought the box back out with a devious grin. What took you so long? The twins immediately grabbed it with their greedy fingers, tears, their eyes lighting up as snot dripped onto their t-shirts. They tore it open, and instantly their jaws dropped in horror. Every nugget had been individually wrapped and sellotaped, 50 tiny parcels. Each one would take minutes to open. I looked at the three entitled stooges. Now enjoy your nuggets. They taste better when you work for them anyway. Derek bought $500 AI glasses and immediately trusted them more than God. We were supposed to be driving to brunch, 12 minutes away, one left turn, one highway exit, and a parking lot with bottomless mimosas. I had the route open on my phone before he even backed out of the driveway. Derek, use Google Maps. He tapped the side of the frames. These have military-grade navigation. You bought them from a podcast ad. In the reflection of his lens, I could see the route glowing blue across his right eye. It pointed us toward the highway. That part seemed fine. It stopped being fine when the glasses told him to exit before the highway and cut through a neighborhood. Then a gravel path behind a rec center that I am almost positive was for joggers. Must be a shortcut, he beamed. A woman walking a dog jumped sideways into the grass as we rolled past at 7 miles an hour. The path dumped us into a public park with a fountain, pavilion, children, one man eating a sandwich on a bench who didn't even bother to look up. Derek, there are children. It's recalculating. The glasses were not recalculating. They were politely telling him to continue straight through a family reunion. We bumped over a curb back onto an actual road, and Derek turned to me with both hands loose on the wheel. See? Military grade. I had my hand on the door handle. Then the glasses chimed. Turn right in 200 feet. There was no road to the right. There was a boat ramp. I said, Derek, what are you doing? He slowed down, squinted through the glasses, and said, it might be a service road. For boats? The glasses chimed again. Continue to destination. Derek whispered, trust the glasses. The front tires rolled over the wet concrete. The hood dipped. The engine made a sound like a blender full of coins, and the car slid nose first into the lake. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then the glasses chimed. You have arrived at your destination. Derek took them off slowly, looked at the glasses, looked at the lake, looked at me. I said, how's brunch? A soggy receipt floated up from the cup holder. $500. Derek watched it drift past the dashboard and said, I think I can still return them. The glasses chimed one last time. Route saved. I was pouring pink lemonade at the 4th of July party when my cousin knocked it out of my hand. Are you drinking that? Yeah, I've had a few glasses already. Justin's face went from confused to absolutely horrified. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. He smacked the cup out of my hand. How many did you have? How many exactly? I just had a few, Justin. Chill out. I had no idea why he was getting so worked up about it. And that's when he screamed for my mom. Aunt Kim, get over here now. When she ran over and saw the empty lemonade, she said, no, no, no. Tell me he didn't drink. He drank it. At least 3 glasses. Mom started shaking. Dad sprinted over from the grill. This wasn't supposed to happen. I thought we labeled the pitchers. I just wanted to know what was wrong. What's wrong with the lemonade? They kept muttering. Who knows what this could do to him? Dad tried to calm her down. Wait, maybe it won't be that bad. Are you kidding me? He's 9. This is terrible. My sister ran over from the pool, and when she saw which pitcher I'd been pouring from, she gasped. Did he drink that? My mom nodded while crying her eyes out. My sister started hyperventilating. We're going to urgent care right now. And that's when I started crying because urgent care meant I was dying. The entire ride there, my sister kept giggling in the back seat. This isn't funny. Your brother could, but she said, I know. I yelled, Mom, tell me what I drank. She dragged me into the clinic and whispered something to the nurse. Her eyes went wide. Oh, how many did he consume? The nurse started checking me. Any dizziness? Flushing? Is the room moving? Then the doctor came in, shaking his head. He whispered something to my mom, and when she put her hands in her face, I decided I'd had enough. I yelled, what was in the pitcher? The doctor just looked at me, not knowing what to say. It was... Then my sister blurted out, it was Grandma's denture water. The nurse burst out laughing. I wasn't. And now, whenever Grandma smiles at me, I can't stop staring at her teeth. My mom took my wife to Mexico and brought back a stranger. We were eating Chinese when my mom showed up. A real wife cooks from scratch every night. Tears ran down my wife's face, and I stepped between them. You didn't cook a single meal while Dad did everything. And if you make my wife cry again, I will go no contact. When she left, my wife buried her face in my chest. How do I get her to like me? I kissed her. You are more than enough. But she shook her head. The next day I came home to every counter covered in homemade dishes, and my mom sitting at our table rating each one out of 10. I started walking her to the door again, but my wife grabbed my arm and pulled me into the hallway. We've been cooking together all day. She even invited me on a wellness retreat to Mexico. My wife's whole face was glowing when she said it. I shook my head. Something's not right about this. She squeezed my hand. I can read people. She's trying. I agreed. But 2 weeks later, when I went to collect them, my wife had a blank look in her eyes. I hugged her, and she didn't move. Meanwhile, my mom was grinning ear to ear. So how was the trip? Fine. What happened on the trip? Nothing. My mom laughed. Isn't she so much more ladylike than before? She only speaks when spoken to, just like they taught her. That night, I tore through my mom's bag and found the brochure. It wasn't a wellness retreat. It was a wife re-education program. 2 straight weeks of starvation, dehydration, sleep deprivation, and oxygen deprivation, until the brain basically shuts down. I walked into the living room with it in my hands. My mom saw the brochure and didn't even flinch. I made her a real wife, and honestly, I actually like her now. My wife was sitting on the couch with her hands folded in her lap. I knelt in front of her. "You are more than enough." She didn't move, and this time I was the one to cry. I was brushing my teeth alone in the campground bathhouse when a scream ripped through the dark. I ran to the window. The porch light lit an empty clearing. No people, nothing moving but the trees. I almost laughed at myself, jumping at shadows while my sister and her friend put out the campfire back at our site. I went back to the sink, but the second I picked up my toothbrush, a low growl rolled in, and it dropped right out of my hand. Whatever was out there, I wasn't going to hide in here and wait for it to find me. My brain went straight to bear, or maybe a rabid coyote. The growl came again, longer this time, with more screaming behind it, and a woman's voice cut through the trees. "Somebody call the park ranger." I pressed my face to the window, but the tree line was a black wall, and the wind was throwing everything around. I grabbed for my phone, and my pocket was empty. I'd left it charging back at the campsite, so nobody knew I was in here and nobody was coming. In the corner by the showers stood a janitor's mop in a yellow bucket. I wrapped both hands around the handle until my knuckles went white. I crept to the door and let my hand hover over the knob. That was when I heard a scream that sounded exactly like my sister. I sucked in a breath, yanked the door open, and burst out into the night with the mop over my head, screaming my lungs out. A scream went off right beside me, and I spun toward it. A little kid, maybe 10, was sitting against the wall by the door, a tablet glowing in his lap, both arms thrown over his head. "Please don't hurt me." I lowered the mop. "Didn't you hear all that screaming? Why are you just sitting out here?" He turned the tablet around to show me. On the screen, a woman in a campground sprinted away from a man in the worst bear costume I'd ever seen, screaming her head off. The kid just shrugged. I was watching a show. It's the only spot with Wi-Fi. I jabbed the mop toward the door and told him he had 10 seconds to get back to his tent. I came in ready to fight off a bear and left herding a 10-year-old to bed with a mop. My older brother logged onto my computer and smirked. "This is for beating my high score in Pac-Man." He pressed delete on my school finals project. I instantly grabbed the mouse from him, furiously clicking it to try recover it, but it was gone. "You're redoing my project." I slammed the mouse down. He laughed. "Not happening, lil bro," but I got in his face. "I mean it. Me and you, Pac-Man, one game, you win. I admit you're better at Pac-Man and never bring up the project. I win. You're redoing the whole thing." His smile dropped and he shoved me back. "You're on wimp." We walked to the Pac-Man machine, and I cracked my neck, ready to do this. I pulled a coin and flicked it in the air. "Heads or tails?" "Heads." It landed tails. "You go first." He pulled out his fingerless leather gaming gloves. "Grips everything, lil bro." He cleared the first 5 levels without breaking a sweat, while I watched with my arms crossed, trying not to show weakness, even though my heart pounded. He smirked and chained all 4 ghosts repeatedly, and soon his score climbed past my old record. He finally died at 125,360 points, then peeled off his gloves and slapped my shoulder. "Beat that lil chump." I gripped the joystick with sweaty hands. If I didn't beat his score, my project was gone. I was so nervous I lost a life during the first 5 levels, and he laughed behind me like he'd already won. But that only motivated me, and I proceeded to grip the stick with laser focus and locked in. His eyes tightened, and when I reached 120,000, he leaned into my ear. "You're gonna choke, wimp. You always choke." But I said nothing and cleared another level. With 1,000 points away, he flicked my wrist. I died, and my stomach sank as I only had 1 life left. When the game started, he immediately lunged for my wrist again. But this time, I was ready and blocked him with my shoulder. He tripped over his shoes and fell. I quickly ate a few more dots, and my score flipped 75 over his. I pumped my fist in the air and let Pac-Man die, while he laid on the floor, groaning in pain. We walked back to my computer, and when he sat down and opened a blank doc, I dropped his gaming gloves on the desk. "Now use those to type my project. Grips everything, big bro." My dad let us win at Monopoly every Christmas for 17 years, and finally cashed in his "I told you so" this December. He'd been warning us since I was a kid that one Christmas he was going to stop going easy on us. We always laughed it off because Dad couldn't even play checkers without losing to my little sister. This year, he sat down at the dining table, cracked his knuckles, and said, "The gloves come off tonight." He landed on Boardwalk on his 4th turn and tried to act casual as he counted out the money. Just a little real estate, nothing major. Then he started buying everything he landed on. By the second hour, my brother was mortgaging properties to stay alive, and Dad was humming Christmas carols. He proposed a trade with my sister that on paper looked even, but 10 minutes later, it had locked her out of an entire color group. She stared at the board. "Dad, Where did you learn to do that? Comes natural when you've been carrying a family for 17 years. My brother went bankrupt first, and Dad slid his hotel onto Park Place without looking up. Sorry, kid. The firstborn falls hardest. My sister landed on a chain of 3 reds Dad had stacked with hotels and went bankrupt 2 turns later. Then it was me. I landed on Boardwalk with 2 hotels and didn't even count my money. I just pushed it across the table. Dad stood up. He walked around to the head of the table and put both hands on the back of his chair, like he was about to give a wedding toast. 17 years. 17 years. I let you kids think you were beating me. Tonight your father finally showed you what he was capa. Mom was in the doorway drying her hands on a dish towel. Honey, you didn't let them win. Dad's mouth froze open. What? You lost. Every year. For 17 years. They actually beat you. My sister's jaw dropped. He what? Mom kept drying her hands. He's been reading strategy books in the garage since 2014. I've been finding them under his side of the mattress. He joined a Reddit forum last spring. Dad slowly lowered himself back into his chair. Mary, what? They're adults. Dad stared at the board for a long time. The hotel he'd just placed on Park Place was sitting at a slight angle. He cleared his throat and straightened it. I got in my car to drive home after a party, but the second I gripped the wheel, I realized I was too drunk to drive. I climbed into the back seat so I could sleep and drive home sober, but hours later, a cop woke me up shining his flashlight. Have you been drinking and driving? I rolled down the window with my head pounding. No, officer, I am indeed drunk, but I haven't driven at all. I'm sleeping so I can wake up and drive home only when I'm sober, but the cop leaned closer. Well, being drunk in the vehicle and planning to drive is still a crime. I'm gonna need you to step out. I was tired and confused and showed him the car keys in my pocket. But these weren't even in the ignition. I wasn't planning to drive until I was sober, but he just motioned his hand for me to step out. I was frustrated and flailed my arms. This is bullcrap. Would you rather me actually drive drunk instead of sleeping or something? He must have felt threatened because he pulled his pistol out and aimed it inches from my head. I instantly froze. I couldn't believe this was happening, and as he cuffed me, people from the party gathered on the front lawn. What's happening? Your buddy here wanted to drive drunk. The lifelong friends I'd been partying with watched me get shoved into the police cruiser, and I could tell by their faces they now saw me as a drunk driver. 3 weeks later, I was standing in court, and the judge looked at me. You're facing 18 months in prison for driving under the influence, Mr. Moore. The cop stood smirking on the other side. He claimed he caught me while driving, but when it was my turn, I told the full truth. I was drunk, but never drove. I slept to sober up. My keys weren't in the ignition. The judge looked at the footage from the Ring doorbell and watched the cop harass me. Did you really pull a gun on a man for choosing not to drive drunk? The cop stammered and went pale. But he was keeping himself and others safe. The judge interrupted. Case dismissed. He banged his gavel, then looked up at the cop one last time. I find this case pretty rich coming from an officer with a DUI on his own record. The cop froze while I stood there twirling my car keys and laughing.
এই তো সাবাস
ও ভাই 1000 আইসদিন ভাই দেখে দিচ্ছে সালাহুদ্দিন ভাই দেখলে রোগী বাঁচে এবারে তোরা তো দরও তো ক্লিয়ার
কই যাবেন?
আরে যাবো কে আমি সেরেন না এখানে এই এলাকার সবচেয়ে ভালো ক্লিনিক কোনটা হেন যাব
হ্যাঁ দ্রুত চলে যান
এদিকে কথা আছে
জানতে হবে দ্রুত চলে যান হিসাব শেষ তার কাছে যাইস না আচ্ছা এই রজনীরা বাটা তুই কত 3600 দিতে
3600 ভাই 3600 নিচে নামবে না
তুমি কাউরে ঠকাও না তোমার জন্য কারো বাপ মরে নাই আমার ছোটবেলায় এই হাসপাতালে আশপাশে ঘুরঘুর করে বড় হইছি
হয় না। আব্বাও যে আমাদের এভাবে ছেড়ে চলে যাবে,
বোমে মরিচ,
খুব ভালো হয়।
বোমে মরিচ দেন। একটা ফুচকাটা হলো কিনা?
একটু নেন না।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, মামা আসুক তারপর শুরু করি।
দোষ, আমরা সবাই মিলে তোরে মাফ করে দিল, আল্লাহ তাআলা তোর জীবনও মাফ করে।
সুস্থ মানে হ্যাঁ আসবেন না কোনো কোনো বিবেকবান সুস্থ
কারণ এরকম ব্যবহার করছিল ওই দিন।
পানিটা খাও। আহা, বসতে দে, বসেন না। রিক্সার ব্যাটারি ডাউন হয়ে গেছে।
বসেন বসেন।
মা, তুমি এসব চিন্তা করো কেন?
এক নাম্বারই দিছি, তোমার আম্মা ভালো হয়ে যাবে। চল।
ধন্যবাদ। একটা মিনিট, আপনি মেডিকেলেরই কিছু একটা ব্যবসা করেন?
তুই জানো না কি করে?
কিছু খাবা না?
আপনার কথা শেষ করেন, তারপর খাবেন।
আসতে পারলি না, কাম কাজ গুছাইছো কিছু?
না, তুমি গুছাইছো?
আমিও তো কিছু গুছাইতে পারিনি।
নতুন ডাইরেক্টর আইছে, আইসিবার বলে মেডিকেলের অবস্থা ভালো, পাবলিক সব দেই হেয়ে নে যায়।
আমি চাই তুমি ভালো থাকো। আর শোনো, যে জাহাজটা যদি সত্যি সত্যি বানাও তাহলে আমাদেরকে ইনভাইট করো। হ্যাঁ,
তুমি সারাক্ষণ সমুদ্রের সাথে ফিসফিস করে কথা বলবে আর আমি হিংসে করব। আমার হয়তো একটু সাহস বেড়েছে। বোকা ছেলেটা প্রেমে করেছে। আর বিড়ি নিয়ে গেছে, বিড়ির প্যাকেট একটাও ছাড়া নেই, সবগুলো দুমড়ে মুচড়ে বের হয়ে চলে গেছে। খাবো কি? ওই স্মোক করবো। হ্যাপি স্মোক।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, কিচ্ছু করতে হবে না, আমি গোসল করে দেবো, শান্ত ছেলের মতো বসে থাকবা। হ্যাঁ, প্রমিস?
কবিগুরু বলেছেন ভাবুন, আমি হাঁটতে যাবো, আমার পেট বড় হয়ে যাবে না হবে। তোর সুখের জন্য আমি সব করতে পারি। তুই তুই এভাবে ভেঙে পড়িস না। তুই ভেঙে পড়লে আমার খুব কষ্ট হয়।
আচ্ছা, চোখের গভীরতা কতটুকু পেলে?